I'm live. Swell. It's good to be live. It's good to be king. It's good to be king. I'll try not to make noise. Everybody gets mad that I make noise. It's very interesting. We all have to keep Joe Biden in our mind. He's got stage 4 prostate cancer, but it's interesting. How did they miss it all these years? But anyway, that's tough. Here's a surprise. Tattoos may be linked to cancer. Put chemicals under your skin. I didn't read this article, but the headline intrigues me. Panic buying, offers wanted. We've seen the biggest 6-week increase since 2020. And, I'm not patting myself on the, it's not about me. It's about recognizing the market. But I've been telling you, I think we're going to go to all-time highs. Everything's levered up. The one caution is the bond market is starting to. We just had the U.S. Credit rating dropped, so there's not a single service out there that says U.S. debt is AAA. And what does that mean? I don't know. Does it mean everybody goes to gold? I don't know. They're saying the SPX is getting overbought. Yeah, maybe. This is the thing. Panic buying, offers wanted. Goldman's trading desk reports panic style buying. We saw the largest net buying since December 21, driven by short covers and a lesser extent long buys. Hedge funds were stopped in amid the market rally. On our trading desks, we also had multiple noteworthy offer wanted requests, primarily in the tech sector. Very interesting. It's another guy I subscribe to. Let's see if I can find his. From Quoth the Raven. On Friday, the U.S. lost its last perfect credit rating as Moody's downgraded it from AAA to AA1, citing decades of rising deficits and interest costs. This ends a perfect rating streak held since 1917. Moody's had warned in 2023 that a downgrade was possible, following similar moves by Fitch in 2023 and S&P in 2011. It's farce, really. By the logic Moody's is now applying, the downgrade should have happened a decade ago. When it became painfully clear that the United States had a crippling spending addiction, compounded by a monetary ideology that essentially tried to reverse the fundamental laws of debits and credits. Yes, it's bad enough that the United States now carries 37 trillion in debt. Imagine all the securities out there created out of thin air as well. Everything's leverage. But what's worse is that despite this massive burden, deficits have continued to grow. Clear proof that we've learned nothing about fiscal restraint. Our refusal to stop putting everything on the national credit card and our complete disregard for basic, he says math, I think it should be arithmetic, but for basic math and economic reality should have triggered multiple downgrades over the past decade. But the real kicker isn't just the reckless spending. It's our full embrace of modern monetary theory, which doesn't just ignore this irresponsibility, but actively encourages it. But somehow Moody's didn't see a problem with monetary policy before Friday. He says every time Paul Krugman wrote another column, or Stephanie Kelton published a new book and then got a national media, who controls the media platform, to promote it, the U.S. deserved a downgrade. Every time the Federal Reserve and the people responsible for advocating asinine monetary theory put on full display their inability to understand the economy or forecast economic events, it should have sent a message to rating agencies that the country is flying blind. When Ben Bernanke publicly said things like, "We can print money at no cost," when Bernanke said the subprime crisis was contained before it caused the collapse of the entire global economy, we should have been downgraded. Every time a Fed governor like Neil Kashkari went on national television to declare that the Federal Reserve had infinite money, we should have been downgraded. When Janet Yellen kept interest rates at 0% for years, despite a roaring U.S. economy that was clearly no longer in need of unlimited stimulus, the country should have been downgraded. Quote Peter Gibbons in Office Space, "It's not that I'm lazy, it's just that I don't care." Every time an analyst, famous investor, government official, or Fed member incorrectly claimed that inflation was transitory when it wasn't, the country should have been downgraded. No, it wasn't just the backwards monetary policy we have embraced to make ourselves feel better about financial irresponsibility that should have led to downgrades. It was also the ongoing parade of public gaffes and humiliations by everyone associated with the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve over the last 2 decades. This put on full display to everyone in the world who was paying attention, apparently except the rating agencies, that we are on a treacherous path destined to end in a catch-22. I used to write often, not just about the Biden administration's fiscal irresponsibility, but also about the fact that they didn't even pretend to care about financial responsibility. The Biden administration never even talked about the idea of making cuts or balancing the budget. But remember, truth and Donald Trump is an oxymoron. The bare minimum, this is the bare minimum any administration could do. Simply talking about fiscal discipline is often enough politically. You don't even have to deliver the results. But the Biden administration couldn't even manage that. And then now he's going to hit Trump. And then along comes the Trump administration. Remember, truth and Trump, oxymoron, according to Lou. Running on the idea of trying to rein in spending and taking on the Herculean task of, at least in some small way, addressing the nation's out of control deficit. There's been talk about recalibrating global trade. There have been attempts, however slow, to curb spending through DOGE. And there's been a focus on getting the country's financial house and deficit back in order for the first time in at least a decade. Only now, as the torch passes to the administration, which at the very least is at least talking about balancing the budget and making some steps toward it, Moody's shows up and casually downgrades the country's credit rating. Honestly, I don't know whether to laugh at the fact that this didn't happen a decade ago, or at the fact that they waited until now. All right, I got to call Ham in 2 minutes. Long ago and far away, in my common labor shoes, I turned the world all which away. I'd turn the world all which away, just because you asked me to. Like into no other field, simple love is simple truth. And all that matters is I do anything you ask me to. Long ago, we embarked on an unprecedented monetary policy experiment, and the outcomes will be just as unprecedented. That means neither you nor I, nor the same rating agencies that were all but complicit in the subprime housing crisis can predict how this ends. I can make one prediction. Silver's going to make you rich, and then it's going to protect your wealth. Gold too, but silver has more leverage. All right, I have to call in on, hang on, I got to check. All right. Okay.
Hey, William.
Yep.
Hold on. I get him right in. Hold on. Hi, William. I think they're very thin. We're going to wait for Christian to call in, and Mr. Lynch will call in at 8:05. So let's just still wait here for a second. And guys, I will just let you know that I saw Bitcoin over $106,000, up 3,000 today. So for those Bitcoin players, congratulations if you're still long. I guess that means the market's turning down because they're running to cover something. William, I want you to address Mr. Lynch about mining. I know nothing about mining except I need a pick and a shovel. That's all I know. So just let me get Kristen. She should be here any second. I'm trying to merge everybody in, and then we can go on with this call. Again, he's going to be telling us about his fight on the naked short selling side in Canada. Again, I'm fighting here. I'm going to know more about what's going on up there, and maybe something up there can help us down here.
Okay.
So we'll just wait for him here. I am every weekend so far. All right. William?
Yeah, I'm here.
I was asking, how's your weekend?
Oh, my weekend? It's all right. The weather's nice. I've been missing my dog, frankly, but other than that, everything's good.
Christian said she's on. You got to call me up. Christian, call me up.
Is it Kristen or is it Kirsten?
Kirsten.
It's Kristen. I'm just trying to cause trouble.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I hope you're here now. Are you here?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Are you still here?
I'm here.
I guess everybody else is still here. Let's start off with the, let her give you a little, she's going to give us a little briefing on, a little about Terry Lynch. Kristen?
Sure. So we've worked with Terry for a couple years now, and he's the CEO of Power Metallic Mines Incorporated. He founded Save Canadian Mining, which is an influential advocacy group. It's dedicated to restoring fairness and transparency in Canadian capital markets. He has been talking about naked shorting and spoofing and market manipulation for many, many years. And honestly, it's fallen on a lot of deaf ears for many years, but he's gained traction in recent years. He currently serves on the board of directors of both the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, which is also PDAC, and also Quantum Biopharma, which you have heard of, that's QNTM. That's the group that has been fighting. They filed a $700 million lawsuit alleging market manipulation in their stock. He's currently actively involved in advancing the regulatory reforms and supporting legal efforts against naked short selling. And he has said, you know, and we've talked about this, William, we've talked about this, that in the mining sector, billions have been liquidated primarily due to naked short selling.
Yeah, so he's on the board of QNTN? Is that what it is?
He's an advisor. He's on the board of directors. Yep.
Okay. Listen, the one thing I'm just thrilled about is that I want people to understand it's not just us 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people. There's many people out here fighting the battles. And, you know, we sort of seem to have to get together because just, you know, everyone has to have the same idea of what's going on here. It's like we're all running in different fractions. And once we become one, that's when we become powerful and we can take down this whole stop this nonsense. He was traveling to Boston, so he'll be calling in about 2 minutes, he said, and we'll just wait for him to call in. And I just wanted everybody to know that I am having a powerful meeting, and I'm not going to discuss any more about it. I will be leaving this week to go see the people, and I have a whole presentation ready to go. And for those who want me to speak about MMTLP, because I got it, I'm going to do everything I can. But I have to speak about what I understand the most and see every day, and that is finger motion. So I will be leading with finger motion, and of course I'll touch on other subjects, but finger motion is the one I'll be presenting the hardest and the strongest evidence. I document it all every day. I just don't talk about it. You know, I write it down and memorize it. I can go 200 miles an hour and give it to anybody. And I just want to show the crime. And guys, I thought that the best way to end this crime would be for the DOJ just to come out and say, hey, if you get caught naked shorting, you're going to jail for a minimum of 10 years. There's no negotiation. That is the same type of penalty they do for counterfeiters. So I thought that if they just say that statement and just send that message, as of this day, if you get caught, you're going to jail for 10 years. And just leave it at that. The rats will all run 2 minutes. Everyone that is around it, if your manager's helping you do it, if your brokerage firm's doing it, no more Goldman Sachs signing off on this nonsense that our systems didn't work and all that nonsense. everyone should be held accountable. People at the brokerage firms that oversee it and look the other way, stock loans, they should all go to jail for 10 years, minimum. Obviously, more of the crime, the longer you go for. That's how I see it, the best way to do it. Because we'll get the stocks that'll pop, like Finger Motion and, the 10 or 20 of them. But you won't have them all going up in the same 10 minutes. All right? Instead of having 100 rockets going off, we'll have, you'll have 18 to 20 of them. And slowly but surely, the money will keep coming back into the U.S., covering their shares. And hold on, here's Terry Lynch. Hold on a second.
And while Ham is waiting, I'm just going to tell you that there's very detailed information that is being handed out to the highest levels of government so that they better understand what's happening. I think they have a very good understanding of what's happening, but just so you know, there's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes as well. And
all right, everybody, I have Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch, are you here? We want to make sure we can hear you.
I am here.
All right, we have Christian here and we have William here, and we want you to... we'll start off by we told everybody a brief introduction to what you're doing and how many years you've been fighting the battle in Canada. But most of us are not aware of what's happening in Canada. I had some run-ins with the Canadian authorities years ago, and they seem to. We tried to fight the battle from the U.S., going to the Canadian authorities, getting the people that were coming into Canada back into the U.S. Before the gateway to naked short selling, as far as I know, was U.S. to Canada, Canada back into the U.S. And there were many little firms that were doing. Canaccord was obviously part of it back then. There was a whole group of brokerage firms out of Toronto and I guess out of Vancouver that were doing it. And Terry, you probably remember Carol Ramon. She was a reporter. She was tied into the shorts. I think she worked for the Journal. Or Dow Jones, I couldn't remember. I met with her a couple of times. But she was a front for the short sellers, just like Andrew Left and Hindenburg. She always wrote the negative stories against people in the U.S. So I think that's my understanding. Why don't you give us a little bit background and to the people that don't know you, we'll give you the floor and we'll ask questions as we go along. We got three good minds listening, so shoot away.
Cool. Well, thanks for having us on. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about the situation in Canada and how it impacts us up there. And it definitely has crossover into the U.S. for sure. We started back in 2019. I run a junior mining company now called Power Metallic, and thankfully it's been very successful. Was the top junior mining company in Canada last year. But along the pathway, when we're growing, we know that there was a lot of issues with our trading. So in 2019, I started something called Safe Canadian Mining with Eric Sprott, Rob McEwen, and Keith Niermeyer, a bunch of really legends of the game, really in the mining finance space, and all seeking to sort of basically stop naked short selling. And at the time, we were thinking that Tick Test was sort of the one of the key culprits. And then over time, as you guys have learned, there's a lot of layers to this onion. The naked short onion has got a lot of layers, and we've learned over the years, spoofing and many, different avenues of attack that these guys have got. But generally, we started in 2019, and we started by doing some research first. We basically, one of the things we did was we sort of said, what was the market like before we got rid of the Tick Test? If you recall, back in 2012, 2011, in the U.S. and Canada, we got rid of a seminal rule really that had been in place since exchanges had started, literally, and that was the Tick Test. So in other words, before you could short a stock, it had to be going up. It was obviously, I think, a really great fundamental rule that could have kept, generally kept the short sellers at bay, because they had to sort of spend more and more money to short a stock.
Hey, Terry, let me just stop there for 1 second, Terry. So I was an institutional broker, so we're talking about the uptick. And I used to get orders in stocks like $12 or $15 stocks that weren't really big traders. Sell 1 million, 2 million shares short. With the uptick rule, it took me 3 months, 4 months to complete that order.
Yep.
Today, with no uptick, they completed in 2 minutes and just killed the stocks. So I just want people to understand what you were talking about. Go ahead, you can continue.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like the reason why that rule is in place in the first place is that why were exchanges invented? Like, I mean, sometimes I think we've lost the plot. You know, exchanges were invented to give investors access to more types of investment, and also to allow companies to have access to more, potential investors in their capital. They weren't invented to make hedge funds or exchanges profitable or make them a lot of money, which is where we're at now. So that unfortunately, has caused a lot of problems. So in the Canadian market, in mining, it's very easy. You think about mining stocks. Generally, they trade, or historically traded, in line with the commodity indexes. So you can pretty much look at commodity prices and look at the benchmark commodity indexes, and against like the TSX-V, which is sort of the proxy for junior mining, and they would trade in line, or actually the TSX-V would tend to trade a little bit higher than commodity indexes, both precious metals and base metals. But today, if you were to look at that same thing, the stocks would have to triple to get back to normal. That's how crushed that sector is. As a result, it's just devastated the capital raising. And then they basically, it's not just a mining problem. I mean, obviously we're mining guys, so we started out there, but clearly it's across the board. It's in biotech, it's within cannabis, and it's every technology. And for Canada last year, just to show you how great the situation is, the entire country of Canada, in every form of equity, banking, finance, insurance, industrials, energy, electricals, biotech, mining, etc., only raised $20 billion. The whole country. And it's a good IPO in the United States. We used to raise $100 billion all the time. So, this destruction is now being felt on a national scale. And I guess, in some respects, it's so bad, it's probably good, because I think we've been crushed so hard and it's been such a devastating impact in Canada that I think even despite their unwillingness to fight the banks that are sort of behind this, or allowing it to happen, they've got no choice now, I think, government to wake up here finally.
Terry, it's Kristen. You and Eric have been instrumental in that fight in Canada. You spoke up before a lot of people did, and I think you've helped other CEOs speak up because you've taught them. This affects companies in every way. They lose billions of dollars, as you said, in the mining industry, but also the ability to hire, keep employees. It also can wreck retail investors, 401ks, pensions. It's really something that everybody has to get loud about.
Yeah, it impacts everyone. I mean, everyone from the waiters and waitresses, that are working in our downtown cores and the financial centers across Canada, across the United States, that are just business is not happening. So obviously, people are not entertained. That's impacted. It affects, like in mining, 10% of our workforce is First Nations. We're obviously trying to build bridges with those folks, and to the extent that you're not getting capital investment money, you're obviously not growing the mining communities, which are often in these areas in the northern parts of our country where there's big First Nations populace. So it impacts across the board, and it's really devastating. So it's something that we all have to sort of take seriously and fight, and that's why we were able to get some really serious business heavyweights in Canada to step up and say, hey, look, enough's enough. We got to change this. Unfortunately, to now, politicians have lacked the courage to do anything other than window dressing, support. But I suspect because of the devastation that they're going to have to change that policy.
There was a ruling recently that, or not too recently, but that we talked about a while ago, I guess, that was sort of a warning to every broker who doesn't enforce trade settlement. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, they're just I think early last week. I mean, Canaccord got fined, for gatekeeper violations, which effectively was, for not managing, the trading activities and actions of their brokers and their clients. And it was a $2.8 million fine, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think about Goldman Sachs doing 36 billion trades and paying $1.5 million,
Right.
I guess that's something, So it's talk about absurd things, but yeah, no, I mean they're starting to get some teeth. Starting to recognize. I mean, we just did a CIRO, which is our national regulator, aka like FINRA in Canada, and it's like FINRA, it's the self-regulatory agency. I'm not a fan of self-regulation. I think it's the equivalent of putting the fox in charge of the chicken house. But anyway, that's what we have right now in both countries, and they did, put out for submission some interesting stuff that if they go through with the changes, it could be quite beneficial. But you look at South Korea, who is in my mind a role model. We should all look at as a country who takes protection of its investors seriously. I mean, they didn't mess around. They shut it down. The entire thing. We're not talking about any particular app. Like we're talking about all short selling shut down, and they've gone through their investigation. They've fined banks and probably going to put bankers in jail. I mean, that's inspiring, and I'm wondering what is wrong with our guys that we can't do the same thing and protect our investors.
Yeah, because I think we've all kind of agreed, even though South Korea has done remarkable work, I think, too, but the fines are not going to do it, right? No matter what they are, it's sort of the cost of doing business. They sign these consent waivers and acceptances, and they don't have to admit any guilt. So that doesn't really work. But I think you're right. If we start seeing people, even one or two, go to prison, that is a whole different ballgame. And that's sort of what Hammond Williams, I've always said. You really need just much, sharper teeth in this.
I always say this is so massive. I've been doing this for 25 years fighting this thing, and it just seems that every time I get going, I run into something that, shit just keeps screaming that this is so big, we're going to bring down a lot of people. That's what I keep bumping into. But, they're too big to fail. We're going to bring them down. It's just the way it can't go. It has to stop or else it will blow up. The whole systems are going to blow up.
Ham, have you ever told Terry your story about your friend who was so broke? You lent him money. He was sleeping on people's couches, and you figured you'd never see it back.
It's a good story. The guy was a broker. He was a complete buffoon. His family needed money. I lent the money. I haven't seen him in years. He pops up. He's got an American Express, one of those black cards. He's made $400 million. He tried to reach out to me because he was naked shorting a silver company. I don't know which one it was.
Out of Canada.
Yeah, and he asked me what I was doing, and I didn't say anything, and he just told me the story and this is a buffoon. This is not someone that's highly educated. And I guess he was funded by somebody. I never got too deep into it because I don't want to know who was funding him. And if he was going down the wrong path with Russian criminals or whoever it was, I didn't want to know. But it just shows you that if you get funded and get set up with a prime broker and get the right brokerage firm that looks the other way, anybody can do it. I'm talking about a third grader. This is not an adult. So he made $400 million.
It's astounding, what we found out about 6 or 8 months ago. I discovered, the mechanism of how they were manufacturing the paper in Canada, which really blew me away. Because of my Canadian mining pulpit, I can write CIRO and ask them pointed questions, and they'll basically get back to me because they recognize, if they don't get back to me, I'll call them out. So they to their credit, they responded back, and what I found is that there's a particular clause, and it's called short market exempt, the SME, and effectively it's the same, sort of clause that allows market makers to be, to conduct business, to be short, but market makers are regulated by the regulator, by CIRO, and they're well managed, and generally they have to be net neutral at the end of the day. They may be off a little bit, but generally in our country, it seems like there's good management of the market makers, and they're sort of net neutral. But unbeknownst to us, what we eventually found this out, because I asked them, if you were a hedge fund and you're dealing pipe to pipe, i.e. computer system to computer system, and you rent the pipe space from CIBC, TD, or Merrill Lynch, the big pipe providers in our country, you automatically got SME status. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And basically, the way it works out is that if you have they're only allowed to do 15% of the volume in any given day. But you put 6 of these guys together, and they're definitely pack animals. They can control any stock, and they can manufacture paper, and it's not marked as a short sale. the market sees all this selling activity. And of course, ordinary investors who have no clue that this is happening just sees, hey, maybe something's wrong in Power Metallic or something. Maybe I should sell too.
Hey,
And it's, that type of behavior is what destroys the market. And the fact that the point we've been making in lately is to say, hey, Canada, you can't discriminate for race, for creed, for sexual orientation, but apparently for money you can do it. It's just, there's no equality, and it's just.
Terry, before you get too far away from bringing up the word pipe, I don't know if people here understand that. That's private investment, public entity, and I'll let you describe it further than that. But it's definitely how these bastards just give companies their own money by shorting the stock, creating stock out of thin air, and then they've supposedly done an investment banking job. It's just a ripoff. Anyway, I didn't want to talk over you. People don't know what pipe is why I interrupted.
In this case, well, you're right about your definition of pipe. I was talking about the computer trading systems.
Oh,
trading like stock.
So I'm the one that didn't understand what you were talking about.
Fair enough.
So that's the same type of system we have in the U.S. Only we all the market makers, market makers were hedge funds signing up to be market makers. The NASDAQ knew about it. I have a story from 2007. Tom Gira was the vice president. They were afraid that hedge funds were just going to sign up to become market makers because of market maker exemption. And they knew about it. They all did it. It was knock yourself out. So you got firms who have a license to be a market maker are now lending their license to anyone in the world for a fee. So I have the driver's license and I give it to everyone, and everyone's using my license, and I make money off of it. So Wedbush is a good example of that. They lease out their license, and they're supposed to oversee it, just like Canaccord just got fined for it, and they look the other way. That's what happens. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, so that to me is the most egregious stuff because, there's no question this, practically, we've done the research in our own stock and in Power Metallic. We went out, we used Share Intel, Tom Roth. We used a lot of different sources of data to try and get an accurate, as much as you could statistically get, what is the situation. And you can't prove categorically, what the level of short is, but you can, determine, the trade imbalances. And there's no rational explanation for there to be a trade imbalance if there's no posted short, on the legit, covering of the shorts and stuff like that. And so generally speaking, you're looking at, and most of these companies, at least 30% of the float is short, naked short, and it's like, wow, that's just such a crazy number. It just impacts valuations across the board.
It's more than that.
Raise capital.
It's more than that.
It destroys investor confidence. Eric Sprott, who, is probably the best mining investor on the planet, and he was asked about, why is retail not coming into the mining space? And he said, because they're not stupid. They basically they've been hit, several times, and they had, and he says they realize, hey, I'm better to invest in real estate or crypto, or maybe I'm buying just tech stocks so that it's so big there's less of an issue there. So at some point, that's the problem. And now we've destroyed this whole ecosystem, and now you're seeing it, and it comes back to real world problems of shortages of materials and supply chain issues, and these things exasperate the issue, right? You break something and it breaks other things.
Hey Terry, just to let you know, my older brother was a risk arb guy back in the day.
Yep.
So he used to borrow stock. He used to pay to borrow stock. And he told me it was just, the stock loan business is just everything.
And you're a little staticky, just saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go. That's better.
Okay. My older brother was a risk arb, and he had to borrow stock to hedge positions. And what he told me was, naked short selling is in every stock, from Intel to Apple. If they stopped trading, they couldn't settle any stock. So it's not just small caps. We see it more in the small caps because we don't have institutional buying to support the attacks. And the big names, when they get knocked down, they have a valuation, they just take it back up. So the small stocks are really a bit vulnerable because we don't have the valuations that they do. And while you're building your company, you're always under attack. And if you can't withstand the attacks, they kill your market cap, flooding the market with shares, and then you have to reverse it, and it just becomes a total shit show. But my brother said stock loan, it's unregulated, no one's paying attention. He would call up for stocks that he needed to borrow in because there was some sort of a deal pending, whatever it was. And he said that, if you paid them more fee, they come up with the stock in 2 minutes. If you paid them cash under the table, they would get there faster. They never look the other way. There's no regulation at all, he said. And this is going back 25 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, what was it? I think it was with Bush that had the function 4 or something that would just go to like in the abyss, but that would give approval, right? I mean,
right.
It's pretty,
Well, one other thing, Terry, that I don't think a lot of people understand is all these day trading firms. Yeah. You can go in there and put up $50,000 or $100,000. You become a market maker. You're allowed to go naked short. These firms have nowhere to borrow shares from. I have a friend that's an expert on it. He says no one lends shares to these day trading firms. Like Fidelity is not lending their positions to these small day trading firms. So you'll see a lot of these day trading firms, they always have an agreement with another day trading firm to borrow shares. There are no shares. They're just making them up. So it's another business that is completely unregulated. And the people come in, they get these pack of wolves. I can do it with 10 of my friends. We can all go and say, okay, Finger Motion's doing something today. Let's all go hit it at 11 o'clock today. There's going to be a story out. And each one of us will go hit the market, selling 30,000, 40,000 at the market. We don't need an uptick. We just smack it out. And then they create these panics. It's like yelling fire in a movie theater. That's another gateway, another gateway to how these guys attack stocks. I just want people to understand that.
Yeah, and it seems to me that obviously, what we're doing in Canada to try and go the next level, we're sort of attacking it from two different sides. One, we're formalizing things more. Canadian mining, I've recruited. We'll announce shortly, probably in the next few weeks, a new management team coming in like that. They'll be full time dedicated to suing the big banks in our country and the regulators. And that'll be one job. Second, they'll be focused on embarrassing the crap out of these guys by showing their malfeasance that happens on a daily basis. You can see it every day at 15.59 in Canada. I'm sure it's the same in the U.S. where your stocks are getting ticked down. If I was as a CEO of a public company, if I was upticking Power Metallic every day, they would haul me off after 3 days to the jail.
That's exactly what they do everywhere. It's the same pattern everywhere. People, I want you to understand what he just said. It happens in Canada. It happens to us. Everyone can see it. And just so you understand, Charlie, we have a stock we've all been involved with. We've been fighting the shorts pretty heavily. The symbol's FNGR. And on Friday, on option expiration, they came in and sold 400,000 at the market at 357, trying to knock it down as fast as they can. So the bear raid came within 3 minutes of the close, and it was just a straight panic. Like, do everything they can to flush it, look for stop loss orders, break its back, everything. Who can defend it when you come in, when these attacks come like that? We don't know when they're coming. So we all see the same pattern, though.
That is absolutely the challenge. But what I think what we're going to try and do is basically focus on that as an attack mechanism, and on the banks that enable it to happen, and just call them out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And basically, if we have literally 50, 100 companies and all their shareholders getting sort of tweeting this or acting this out, then I think that's going to start to put some pressure on these guys. All while we're litigating as well. And then at the same time, from a company level, I think we have to obviously take matters in our own hands. Like we're for our own deal, we're trying to get people to put things in the DRS, get them out of the system as much as you can to come up with ways. Like we did a sort of a private spin out that was helpful. You have to continue to throw roadblocks. And I mean, the challenge is, of course, it's hard enough to build a great company in any business without worrying about the shenanigans here. But, if you, unfortunately, it's just another one of the jobs that you have now is you have to do that. And more CEOs have to get active on it. And it's like, if they don't, and many of them haven't, I suspect in addition to people, suing regulators and banks, they're going to start suing company boards for not taking the case up because they're just not fighting hard enough. That's the bottom line.
Terry, let me give him this one. Terry, back in the day, 25 years ago, I was the CEO of a public company. We had a shareholder vote to remove the company from trading at the DTC. We wanted to trade it physical shares only, which was allowed back in the day. I don't know how old you are, but I'm pretty sure you know about that.
Yep.
We voted to get our shares out of the DTC, which was, you're allowed to do it. We were making so much noise. The depository trust, the day we won our vote, Carol Ramone came out. The DTC came out with a story. They changed the rules. If you were outside the DTC, you were viewed not to be a public company anymore. So they changed the rules because of what I did. That's how much I broke their balls, excuse my French. All right.
So
I had to go back, take another vote to get everybody back into. We had to get back into the DTC, otherwise we would be viewed as not a public company. And you say, okay, you did that. This is the interesting part. Besides them changing the rules and changing the games, we took a vote on a Monday. I had to take another vote 4 days later because otherwise we were going to get banned. To get the vote, I had to go door to door to find people who had a voting card. Most people were not getting voting cards. People were getting voting cards who had 100,000 shares were getting a voting card on 1 share. So let's say Merrill Lynch got a voting card of 1 million shares. They broke it up. Instead of having voting cards for 100 million shares, they made 1 million look like 100 million by giving everybody 1 share and not giving other people voting cards. Most people didn't vote anyway. So I had to go door to door to get the vote. To get the vote to get back in, a couple of days later, the same people I went back to didn't even get a voting card on the second vote. So they moved all the numbers around again. So we were sitting there saying, wait a second. My friends, good friends who voted the first time, I went back to them 5 days later, and they never got a voting card then. They weren't considered a shareholder. So they were just throwing these things around, and whoever got them, got them. They didn't even care. I mean, there was total chaos, and I'm using the best law firm in the world, Morgan Lewis Bockius, and they helped us out immensely exposing this fraud. This is 25 years ago. So these guys changed the rules on you. You're playing against a stacked deck. The DTC in the U.S., I don't know what the Canadian deposit is. I caught them short too many times, but we trapped them all. Everything that people are trying to do, I already did 10 times worse. But Terry, I just wanted to ask you a question. We all noticed you joined in the fight on QNTN. What brought you to them to advise them? What can you do for them?
You know what? It was funny. They asked me because obviously they saw what we were doing with Empower Nickel, which became Empower Metallic, and the fight we were having there. They knew obviously something was fishy happening in their company, and so we started talking maybe a couple years back, and started to introduce them to Danny Guy and Wes Christian and Tom Ronk and all the people that would share intel, etc. To see if they first if you can quantify you really have a problem stuff, and then as the sort of progress unfolded, and then when I saw the absolute madness, where you have a 3 million share company trading 20, 30 million shares, and it's like and it's not but those guys, and it's like, how is that even possible? And then so when I talked to Z, when he got geared up for the lawsuit, did the right things. They spent the money. They did the legal due diligence to get it funded, so it wasn't like the burden. So such a burden on the company. They could put up some, but they had such a good case. They could do that. And then I love the company. I think it's just inherently a very valuable company, very massively undervalued. They've got a really, cool MS treatment that's a different approach that in a really big disease area that really needs some new, treatments. And they're both going to phase 2 in that, so that's valuable in itself and exciting. And then they have, the Unbuzz, which is their, great new beverage category in terms of the alcohol, reduction of symptoms, area that has a lot of potential. And they got some really, great beverage pros running that in separate business that they're not financing. They get a big slice of it. And they get like ultimately $250 million in royalty plus 3% after that. So it's a really great business case for supporting the quantum stock. And then they can take the same tech into medical. So there's a lot of sort of fundamental, to me, underpinning to it. And they were trading for, at the time I invested, and pretty substantially, they were trading at around cash value. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. These guys are getting railroaded, but they've gone about it the right way. They built a solid company that's got spectacular upside. They're committed. Guys could have walked away with $6 or $7 million. They didn't. They stayed in there to fight the fight, and they've hung in there. And I think they're going to win big. I just wanted to help them any way I could, and put some money in, and we tried to sort of support. Because I think good companies sort of have to band together and be helpful, and because we need a few wins. Because the only way we're really going to punish these guys is to have some big wins. We need a quantum to go to 100, or whatever it could possibly go to. Those guys will lose a lot of money in that scenario, and we need Finger to go to similar numbers. This is if they start losing a lot of money on Power Metallic and Finger, Quantum, whatever. That will teach them lessons that all this chatter won't, because they don't really give a shit about what we say. Pardon my French. The only thing they care about is money. So you got to hit them where it hurts. And I feel like there's a few of these deals that are really good deals that have the fundamentals, smart management, that's well financed, that they can take the fight to these guys and make them pay. So I want to be part of that.
Oh, that is. I can't thank you enough for doing that. I really don't. I've spoken to the CEO. I really don't know much about it. But anybody that wants to fight, and bring it to them, I'm on board. And just to go back in time, I brought Naked Short Selling to John O'Quinn, who is O'Quinn, Laramack, and Pirtle. He just won his $15 billion lawsuit in tobacco. And when I went down there, Wes Christian was down the road down in Houston. So Wes sort of became the leader because John died in an accident.
Right.
Pirtle had cancer, passed away, and the other guy, Laramack, retired. So Wes became the leader of the Naked Short Selling world by default because everyone else in front of him passed away. That's how much time has gone by. It's just remarkable that whoever's left is still standing here. We're not spring chickens anymore. We've been fighting this for a long time, and the more time goes on, the more angry I get because these guys have basically tried to ruin my life.
Yeah, the good news is you're starting to get. I think there's some green shoots, coming. There's getting to be more lawyers who are conversant in this. There's getting to be more data sources which are unimpeachable. Where before we were arm waving, and they would say, and you've got aluminum foil in your head, Terry, you've got aluminum foil in your head. You're a conspiracy theorist. But no. Now we're coming with data, with science that stood up the test of time in the courtroom, and it's like much harder for these guys to shoo that. And now we're starting to see senior government officials south of the border, north of the border, where we've been at this now for several years, and people are realizing, hey, we're not going away. We're going to gear up, and we're going to bring the fight to you. So I think there's from a perspective of an investor out there who's listening, I think there's opportunity in these companies. Obviously, you have to fundamentally believe in the company and what the company can do underneath. But there's some good ones out there, and I think there's some good, done in the right way. That if you get a big force behind it. I mean, you saw what happened, with GameStop and stuff like that. These things can happen, and I think they'll happen again with more regularity in the near future.
Yeah, it's what Ham always says. Data doesn't lie. People do. Terry, you've talked about bringing numbers right to the regulators and saying, you know what, your numbers that you're giving us are wrong. And you've come back at them. And I think other CEOs have to do that, but they also have to have the lawyers for their companies behind them, because a lot of the lawyers are afraid for the CEOs to say anything.
Yeah, so what we think that, part of the solution there for us is this is what Save Canadian Mining will probably change it to ultimately Save Canadian Markets, just be more broadly approachable, not just because it's like, Quantum, the Canadian company, it's a biotech company, but it's getting savage, and right. So, I think the thing is we need a much stronger collective, and there you could easily, we think, raise a few $1 million and really build a substantial war chest to fight these guys on almost like a level playing field. But you have to have like a management team that's committed. Like I'm running my company, Zishan's running Cube Quantum. Like he doesn't have time to do this all the time. He's running his business. I'm running my business, and that's why we need to have sort of a separate, corporation who does nothing but fight on the lawsuit, does nothing but fight, but on the PR. And we, Z and myself and other CEOs, we can be supportive. We can help them raise money. We can come on podcasts. We can talk about the situations, but the day-to-day fight that has to go on, because that's what they're doing. They're beating us every day. Like it was funny or not funny. We just raised $50 million. Sort of end of February for my mining company. Very successful raise. And then, a week later or so, the tariff stuff started to come down, and that destabilized the whole market, as you remember, for about, a month, 2 months there. It was pretty choppy. So it made no sense for us to be pushing hard on the IR stuff or just going out and talk to investors. But we'll have to sort of see how this shakes out. But, who doesn't stop pushing? The shorts, man. If you're not out there every day bringing in investors every day into your company, they are hitting you every day at 15, 59, 59 with all sorts of it. Like these guys, the one thing you can say about the shorts, they are the smartest guys in the room. They have so much money, they have so much computer power, so much programming talent. I mean, they're relentless. The games that they try, and you guys have seen them all. The 100 shares every second. The various ways that the crazy ways that they can tear you down. So you have to fight them all the time. But it's almost impossible to keep it up, right? But that's why you need to you have a really great fundamental company that can sort of bring that forward, and then you also have to think about bringing the fight to them by organizing and beefing up so that you can be competitive.
Thank you.
Yeah, without a doubt, Terry. We one thing I try to tell all the shareholders all the time. I come from the trading background, so. Again, I'm not a miner. I worked on an institutional desk. I used to cover short sellers, real short sellers that needed an uptick and borrow the shares, or else we couldn't do it. That was when I did it. This market, these guys it's just crazy people doing it. I agree. But the one thing they need to live is volatility. And I want to choke it off all the time. Like the volatility always comes to the downside. For example, Finimotion was breaking 5 the other day, and they started to attack it because they can't let it go up, because when it goes up, they have a margin problem. So the volatility is always to the downside. I slowly, and I hope, taught everybody for 3 years every day, showing them how they try to make that work. I'm a firm believer in never chase, accumulate, step by step. I don't care if it's a penny a day, 2 pennies a day. Make the stock, strangle them, go sideways to up, and this way they don't have that volatility. And what happens is it's like a rat trapped. They have no choice but to start to attack. And what I like to do is just I build up the base of buyers, and we just stand there and we wait until they run into the wall and we smash them. That's what we have to do. It's unfortunate, but that's what I have to do.
I don't disagree. I think that's the right message, and so that you just have to keep on communicating your story, get your story out there, talk about the fundamentals, show people that you're out there and that you're going to be around, and let them know that there's going to be another day. and you just got to keep it on, and eventually, these guys will. My understanding is, I guess, with the Canadian situation, is these are platform shorts. So like they're down large on Power Metallic. They've been shorting us since we were 10 cents and 20 cents. We're like, I don't know, $1.20 now. So they're down a big number. But they're up on 99 other stocks out of 100. They're up on 95. So that's the problem, is that they've somehow been able to pretty much ad hoc get in there and short everything. And so while they're down on one, they've got more than enough capital. So the failure to deliver, it seems to me that's the big issue. If we make these guys deliver, which is what is now coming up in Canada, that's what the proposed new rule is forcing failures to deliver, even on the short market exam. If that actually happens, that will be the end of these guys, because that's how they exit the paper. And what happens? The paper comes down, and it permeates into the U.S. market for those cross-listed issuers. And then the final trick of the trade is they move it off to out of the U.S. jurisdiction, out of Canadian jurisdiction to Europe. And then both of our regulators lose sight of it. They both have officially said that. So this happens, and this is like it's just gone into the ether, but they still overhang the market, So it's crazy that they've allowed this to go on, because as you say, it really is endangering capitalism, as we know it.
Well, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to the highest level. I'm working on meetings with the highest level at the DOJ, and my goal is to present to them that the paper trail of this is leading to financial terrorists. And my job is to them is, okay, prove us wrong. I know I'm right. You tell me where the money's going. Because if the money's going to one person offshore, and if idiots know about it, very sophisticated people, just like there was a group in Dubai got caught naked shorting into the U.S. and lost $128 million. How is anyone letting people from Dubai naked short, not buy and sell stocks, I can see doing that, but naked short into the U.S. and no one know anything about it? So obviously, the system is completely broken. They don't know who's doing what. And you know what? If the money goes into the hands of the wrong people, they can help destroy our own countries by doing that. We're funding terrorists as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't agree with you more. And we've been talking to national defense issues, national defense figures in our country, getting the same message. Because if you think about the strategic minerals, as a which is now sort of supply chains and all this stuff is a big part of the whole topic of conversation. Well, you know what? If you can't fund them, you can't make them. So if you destroy the funding, you're automatically favoring the other nation. So,
well, Terry, let me just give you a story about that, because I know it cold. I'll say in 2005, 2006, I was following a company in the U.S. called Force Protection. This thing was FRPT. The stock was squeezing to 30. All right. The company made a V-shaped military truck that could drive over the mine so that the soldiers' legs wouldn't get blown off. We were using these Humvees that were flat. When they ran over the mine, it would blow up the bottom of the Humvee, and the soldiers would get killed. When this exploded, it threw it out to the side. All right. This company was the leader in doing this stuff. It was $30. They naked shorted the company down because they needed to raise capital to buy more trucks. They destroyed it down to $2. This is a U.S. military company. Down to $2. And I believe it was acquired by Northrop Grumman at the end at $5.68. So they destroyed it and eventually made it go away. And another military company had to buy them out. But that was a truck that was used in Iraq and helping protect the soldiers, and no one even cared. I tried it, and I personally called up all the government agencies, the military, telling them about it. Pat Byrne did a story on it, but I was one that founded it, and I said I couldn't believe that no one said anything about it. Zero. And I watched them do it to attack cancer companies, breast cancer companies. I documented it all. I've seen it all. It's insane what goes on here. And you know what? What you're saying to me about mining, I never really understood it, but now I can see how they need the mining or the metals to do all this production for all these military cases also, besides general uses.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yep. No, that's exactly what's happening. And, you know, and it's funny, I was in Washington, D.C. about 3 or 4 weeks ago at the thing called the Trilateral Commission. I was speaking on critical minerals there, and it was actually the same weekend that they dropped the tariffs. And so we had like senior political officials there, the guy who wrote the IRA Act, and you know, I'll tell you what, the U.S. government and the DOD and the DOE have woken up in a big way about this, you know, serious problem they're in. You know, where China has got like a 30-year head start on tying up the supply channels, and they've got to wake up. And I made the point at this, you know, conference. I said, guys, it's good that you woke up, you know, and it's good that you're going to look at permitting and expediting stuff there and providing, you know, financial support and this sort of thing. But if you don't fix your capital markets, it won't matter, because government can't write 100% of the check. Private equity, private business, private capital has to provide at least 50% and sometimes more. And we've destroyed that ability, or we're destroying it. And if you don't fix that, you won't be able to respond quick enough. So, you know, I think those are the reasons why, more than anything, that will change, because I think that the Department of Defense is now waking up that, holy crap, we got to change this. And that's a good angle for us, because security's got much higher profile than money losses. You know what I mean? In some cases, it's sort of, you know, they sort of roll their eyes a bit on investors. They're sort of all, it's sort of like, they sort of see investors like farmers, you know, and I don't know if you've ever seen a farmer who's had a good year in farming. They always complain there's always something wrong, yet they're driving, you know, new cars, and they're having a good. So it's the same thing with their perception on, you know, government's perception on investors. You guys are always whining about something. So, you know, while we do have something legitimate to whine about, that's why they sort of white noise. But that's the real thing for those guys. They are very concerned about, you know, security. National security is top priority. And I think that's something we need to lean on more, you know, because that's definitely something that's...
Yeah, no, listen, I screamed, believe me, I've tried every angle you can think of. And, you know, it's been years. I've been through 5 SEC commissioners. They've all, what's his name? SEC Commissioner Cox. It's the closest we came to getting something done, but no one enforced it. Harvey Pitt passed away. He was fighting for us, you know, but I still don't understand the SEC commissioners. And one of the things that you said you spoke to some of the regulators in Canada. How are they not embarrassed about what's going on? How do they go home at night? In the U.S., we berate them all day long. I mean, we have thousands of people attacking. If you go to Twitter, it's like a crazy fest out here of us attacking officials and whatever. I don't even understand how they don't go home. It's unbelievable how they look the other way. So we talk in the U.S., and I'm sure they do in Canada. We always we want to thank our first responders, the analysts, the firemen, the military for serving, and yet they rob all their money. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. The FBI, the other day, Cash Patel was putting out honoring the dead FBI agents who served or whatever it was. And I'm saying that you let the criminals on Wall Street steal their money from their families and their children like it's no big deal. Their pension money, everything just gets robbed. And it's remarkable. And it's just, to me, I don't know how we can survive if it keeps going on like this. It has to end. I think we have the edge. We need people like yourself who've been educating people. You know, Terry, you don't think you are, but you know, the people that are here, I wanted them to hear from a guy like you across border who has the same fight in mining. You know, people always say it's in every field. Mining, I told you, breast cancer, brain cancer, food companies, everyone's getting hit. And Terry, you know, I always bring up stories. And one of the stories that I found many, many moons ago was that United Airlines, you know, because they always drop the line on you, the reporters. Oh, it's only the small companies. Well, United Airlines was driven into bankruptcy just on unsettled trades. Gene Maricel wrote the story in Business Week in 2002. It's very easy to read. It says I think it's foul play, UAL foul play with the shorts or something like that. And at the end of it, all the money managers, a tightly held company, all the money managers that owned it were all like, we can't get our stock delivered. And the New York Stock Exchange made a bold statement. Their quote was, we're going to investigate it. That was 2002. It's 2025. I've been looking for that investigation for 23 years. I've never heard about it. Because I followed it. I was there when it happened in 2002. And everyone, one of the guys on the phone today, I think his uncle was a pilot for United, all lost their pensions. Everyone lost everything. And they just recuperate. They just reorganize and come out again. And everyone got wiped out. It's just, no one talks about it. It was no big deal. People that worked 30 years for the company all got wiped out, lost everything. And that was United Airlines, not a small cap, United Airlines. So again, Terry, I don't want to keep you all night. I know you just flew into Boston. If you can drop off, it'd be great. And we thank you. And I will be in touch. We will do this again. And I'm just gonna recap to the people about finger motion. I don't think you'll need to hear that. So I'll ramble on about that with my team of people. And I appreciate it, Terry. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Terry, thanks.
Kristen and William, you still with me?
I'm with you.
We are.
So, guys, I'm going to make my presentation. I think we got to the highest level of DOJ. A shareholder has stepped up, someone through ACE, and and listen, people. If you ever have anything, please bring it to the table. We'll always try our best. We need everyone to row the boat together. I couldn't get there. This guy got me the call. Boom, boom, boom. I got to be someplace at a certain time this week, and it's going to happen. All right? I don't know what happens when I get there. I think I have enough evidence and enough knowledge to get this down the road fast. I have thoughts how to end it. I have thoughts on this. I have thoughts on that, which most of you know about it. And we're going to do our best. Again, tomorrow in Finger Motion, we saw the attack at 4 o'clock. I don't know what their motive is, trying to push it lower all the time. So I don't think that's going to work. I think accumulation, again, to sideways, to move up. And you know what? Listen, I don't care who's listening anymore. We're in a fight. And, I always tell William, and William gets nervous when I say this stuff. But you know what? I don't call it market manipulation. I think it's education. And at some point in our lives, we got to fight back. All right? My money's at stake. Your money's at stake. Everyone's money, their future's at stake here. And before I tell anybody, when I speak to my friends, I'm not sending you out there to your death. I'm not charging up a hill and telling you to go run into bullets. If Steve Rosenberg was on, yes, I would send him, yes. But if he's not there, I believe in that. The way to fight back, even if the shorts are on the phone, is I told all my friends this weekend, as many calls as I made, don't pay more than $4.25. And you say, why? I believe that I think tomorrow the stock is going to open up, go back up to 460, and then they're going to attack it down. If you don't chase it and stand at 425, when they try to push it down, okay, because I don't know everybody who's buying it, if they try to push it down and there's a wall there, it's like they run into a brick wall, and then the volatility disappears. And then it's a slow march up, and that's what I like to see. And that's how you beat these guys, a slow march up. And if we move up 25 cents a day, by Thursday or Friday, we'll break through the wall at 5, and we're off to the races. And that's when I'm going away. So I think it all planned out perfect. And again, I don't give a shit who's listening anymore. We're fighting evil, disgusting people. And as you can hear, it's going on in Canada also. Kristen, you have anything to say about any of this nonsense?
Yeah, there's a couple people have reached out, closed at whatever, 389 after hours.
Yeah, that's all manipulation. It's not.
Right, I know. But explain how they don't just push that down even further. People are worried that it's going to go back to $1.05. Just explain that for people who are fairly new to the game, how that works.
But it's going back to where? $1 what?
Like $1.05, $1.20. They're like, what prevents them from doing that again?
But obviously, they can't keep selling all these shares. Listen, if they thought they can win, they let the stock go higher, right? Their panic is you can see the panic in their trading. That their panic is, you can tell they're in trouble just by their trading. The attacks that they're showing you are attacks of desperation. If it was nice and easy, there's something going on behind the scenes. and they know it. So they're trying to break the stock as fast as they can, but they're trying not to sell as much as they can. The attack on Friday was, believe it was option related. And if anyone listens to me explain options, even though you may have lost some money at the end, you should have made money in this trade. This is a great trade for everybody. And for the people that listen, I told everybody 60,000 times, you buy them, sell them, and buy some cheap calls and forget about it, use the profit or break even, that's a win. Because you don't know what the play is going to do. But pushing it down is not going to work. We have too many buyers. The company just landed a major deal in Indonesia. This business is highly profitable. We have software people here. Data is gold. Without data, you can't do AI. AI needs data. Fingermotion has the data on 1.5 billion people in China. I don't know how many people in Indonesia. Obviously, they're spreading out from out of China now with their insurance product. And that's backed by Munich Re. So they're running into what Terry said. Fundamentals will help support these stocks and move them higher. Okay? That's the underlining factor here, that these guys are trapped and the company's fundamentals are moving forward. So they have a real problem. But volatility is their key. They want the people on the boat to panic. They're shaking the boat, and they always do it down. It's 260 million in Indonesia. So it's almost as big as the USA. But again, they need to drive it down. Volatility never comes to the upside. If they're looking for stimulus, they're going to take the stock up. But they cannot take it up because they don't have the money to back the trade. Every time it goes up $1, it's $260 million in losses. Okay? Terry said these guys are deep pockets. I don't care how big you are. 260 with momentum becomes $3 billion real fast. And whoever's selling this, when it comes back and it unwinds, besides losing billions of dollars, they're going to go to jail. All right? You can see all the great crimes that get busted here. Once you start losing money, like the guys in Dubai, they lost 128 million. There's people investigating that now. All right? We've been warning the government. We put it up there. We put the truck out there 17 times, I think now, 17 or 18 times. We've insulted everybody. I'm not here to insult these people. I'm sure there's great people here. I'm not here to insult Donald Trump or the commissioner. I mean, it's ridiculous that we have to stoop to that level just to get them to look. But it's a disgrace that they don't even address it. One shareholder said it best, and I made a sign about it. He said, their silence is telling you that they know about it. They just don't know how to fix it. Because once you unleash this and people have to stop buying back and they shut this down, these guys are so deep into all these stocks. There's so many companies that are shorted. Like Terry, he just said, 30% of a public company. Fingermotion is shorted 5 times greater than the shares in the company, right? 6 times greater. Think about what a mess how these other companies, Tesla got 1 billion shares short, Kodak got 1 billion shares short, Plug Power, Fuel Cell, SCEL, all these companies have been heavily shorted. Wolf, WLF, and we've been talking about that for a while. Billions of shares. Each dollar up, they lose $1 billion. Think about how big a mess this is. But I'm not here to save them. I'm here to save us in Fingermotion. And then we can move on to other companies. I can't save the world. These other companies, I tried to pitch the people of Wolf. I pitched the guys in Mullen. I pitched CHRS. They decided not to do anything. I mean, and their stocks just go lower. You know, I tried to help out these guys who got to deal with Lynn Partners. I forgot the symbol, KNW, straight down. Now they're going after their other one, GMGI. It was $250. They got $12 million from Lynn. Now it's $1.50, making a new low. It's just they just keep no matter what money you get, you can never do anything to save yourself. They just keep shorting the stock. They make more money with a flop than they do with a good company, and that's what they continue to do. There's nothing more to say.
It's important for people to know that Finger did take that passive planning, but they paid it back, and that's where the trouble began.
Oh yeah, no, they got rid of it. They had their opportunity to kill this company. And my friends helped fund the company, gave them the money, and got rid of them. Now they're short against no debenture, and now they're trapped. So instead of buying the stock back and taking a loss, They just pressed their bet, saying, screw you, we're not going away. That's what they said. And we said the same thing to them, we're not going away. So here we are a year and a half later, and they're still trying to stop the upside. In the last 10 days, we traded 20 million shares. 20 million shares.
So
Let me
again,
go buy it.
There's a couple other questions. You're hitting on them, but I just want to make sure. This is from Scott Scheller, who's often very active on Twitter and has really good questions. And I think he's hit on these, but let me just go through them so that if you think you didn't, you can touch on them. He just said, finger closed above 4. What are the possible outcomes? Will they force delivery? Of course, not yet. We haven't seen that, but we may. And then talk about shorts paying premium, right? Because everything, as you have said, costs money on Wall Street, and the effects on trading, which you talked about. And then he said, could you teach about short attacks? I think you've done that a little bit, how they're done, what they try to achieve with them, and how. And it's really just a psychological mind game, right? They want to make you sell. That's
the whole game is to get you to sell. They pay people, these stooges, to go on Twitter. Listen, people, I get the bashes. But why are you so angry at me if we get people to buy the stock? If you're shorting the stock, you should be throwing me a party. Why would you be mad that we got people buying the stock? You should be happy about it. When a short seller needs a buyer to get short, right? So we're pushing the stock up to get a higher price. What's the anger? The anger is these guys, the more of them, they're coming out because they have a margin problem. The boss is telling them, hey, we got to get people to sell. Attack Ham, attack William, attack anybody. Just shut them up. Don't let them get viral. Don't let it turn into GameStop. That's all they're trying to do. If it ever turns into GameStop, we're dead. Okay? These guys, this is what the game plan is. That's all it is. We're really saying, hey, stop the manipulation. I can live with the stock that's $4.50. I can live with that. Let the company fundamentally build it up. But if we didn't fight back, they would push it down to $1. All right? And then eventually it'll go up because the company's fundamentals will work. But when is it the company needs to raise capital? When is it the company needs... If the company got a big contract, say in another country, and needs to come up with $10 million, where are they going to raise it at 12 cents? Where are they going to raise the money at? It destroys the market cap of the company. This stock should be $20 going to $100. If they want to sell a million shares, they get $20 million in. You don't need to sell 20 million shares to get $1 million. That's what goes on. They try to push it down. So that's how they hurt these companies. And eventually, you have too many shares outstanding, like Northwest Bio has been rigged for years. I think they have over 1.5 billion shares now. I know people that owned it when it had 50 million shares years ago. And now it's over 1.5 billion. And that company's working on what? To help people with brain cancer and other types of cancer. No one even cares. The press doesn't even address it. How does the press never address it? People die of brain cancer every day. Hollywood actors, this person, their parents, no one cares. You should be screaming about this stuff. Because it's going to affect someone in your family. Someone you know is going to get it. You know, it's remarkable. My mom died of breast cancer. I fought for IMMU, and they were making sure that Adam Schornstein was writing stories about it, trying to knock it down. It was a $5 stock. He was did everything in the world, write fake stories to knock it down. He did win, got it knocked down to 2.5. And then the company went to $88 because it got taken over by GILB, and their data was great. But he needed to get his guys to cover. And in the meantime, he struck out and hurt a lot of people, including myself, with his fake stories. I mean, it's just remarkable. And that was for breast cancer. Breast cancer. Who would want to do that? What if your mom got it? When you want to save her? I mean, they don't even care. Couldn't tell us. It's about money. Terry just told you. It's about money, money, money. Finger Motion is a solid company moving forward. They just landed the country of Indonesia. With the telecoms, they get the data. The country. They didn't get a contract with a little company. They got a country. That's the second country they got. China and Indonesia. And who's going to be sitting here shorting it? No one would short this stock. I knew short sellers. They wouldn't do that. You know, someone just told me, the software guy, he said, this company is like Snowflake. Snowflake is a $60 billion U.S. company. So is PLTR, Planetier. I think that's everything. Yeah, it's another big company that does data. Data is gold. There's stories about it all the time. Figure Motion gets the data, all of a sudden it's shit. Data is gold for everybody else, but Figure Motion got it, it's garbage. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. All they're doing is trying to shake you out. That's it. And William, you still with me?
I'm with you.
What did Martin tell us? What did my friend Rob tell us in Atlantic City?
He said, is it Kristen or is it Kirsten? No, he said as soon as they get profitable, it's kryptonite.
That's it. The shorts, they have nothing to do. And Figure Motion is close to going profitable. Whether it's the end of the year or the next quarter, it's coming. The company has the big deals. Once it goes profitable, they're dead anyway. That's what he said. And this is a guy who's been doing it 35 years.
The other thing they said we were all sitting around a table and there was about, I don't know, 8 of us. And one of the guys, I won't say who, asked a question that you can't answer. He said, where does a company go to get honest money on Wall Street? There's no good answer. There's no good answer to that.
Everybody who gives you money will give you the money only if they sold it before they give you the money.
Exactly.
So a homeless person can actually be a funder for you, for your company. Just go to Grand Central Station, get some guy in a cardboard box, use his name. He can sell stock. As he raises $1 million, he gives you the money. He gives it to you in tranches. That's how they do it.
I mean, a guy that day traded Yahoo as his only credential, he could do it.
Right. That's
Jeff
exactly
Easton.
what it is. So anyway, people, the fight is, we're not going away. I'm going to the highest level, and thank you to the shareholders that are helping out. There was another great shareholder that introduced me to the Secret Service. All right? We can't, these are friends of people. Okay? So we know, we mentioned him. He sent me to, and I met with Dan Bongino before. He knows about naked short selling. I told you I went to the meet with him. All right? So people know about it. Shareholders, we do our best. We'll take every meeting. We'll make sure we try. But again, there's no guarantees on what they're doing. I don't know. I went to Morgenthau's office. He was a DA from New York.
You're cutting out him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I went to Morgenthau's office. He was a district attorney in New York City. Many, many years ago, he passed away, but I went there. And when he went to investigate it, I went in. I always put that picture up, Wall Street Court counterfeiting. That was my friend. He was a federal agent. He took me into Morgenthau's office, and they were investigating it. And the SEC shut down the investigation. He said, listen, we can't do it. It's the SEC. That was 25 years ago. So, again, we know who's pulling the strings here, who's blocking it. And you know what? We're going to the higher level now, and hopefully we get to the president and the head of the Department of Justice, and we get to Dan Bongino. And this week we have an outstanding meeting set up, and I'm very excited about it. And I'll be preparing documents all week about it. So again, I'll have my stuff ready and my pitch ready. So I'm ready to go. Is everybody okay now? Is there any other questions?
I think we're good.
All right, everybody, thank you, and I'm glad we got to hear from somebody different, and it's nice to hear. And I will get us an update on the QNTM and their lawsuit with Wes Christian as soon as he gets back. He was on vacation in Japan. So I want people to hear where they stand and what's going on, and Wes will be great about that. And right behind that, we're going to drag in Patrick Byrne again. And when he comes back into the country, we're going to get all these people fighting for us. Remember, Patrick Byrne did all the legwork for Trump on the election fraud. So Patrick Byrne has got good inroads to Trump. So again, we will get this exposed one way or the other. All right, everybody, have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Bye, William. Bye, Ann. Thanks.
Well, I didn't have anything to eat. I didn't eat dinner, so sorry I had some cheese and apple in front of you. I can keep going a little while, but maybe I don't know. It's 9 o'clock. maybe that's enough. I will just say a couple of things. One, on Fingers trading tomorrow, I strongly advise you not to buy shares in some sort of pattern of cooperating with each other. They will come after you if you do it. And if they can prove that if the stock went up and they can prove you were buying to try to cause it to go up with other people, you're at risk. I don't condone it. It seems unfair because they let the other side do it, but Terry is correct about the relentlessness and the it's very similar to what happens in the Middle East, and I don't want to cause controversy on it, although I really commend the young man who spoke at I think it was New York University. I think it was Columbia, maybe. Commend him. But it's the same thought process. Just keep pushing, keep taking, distract, but keep pushing, keep your eye on the goal. And it's a similar, I think it's a similar psychosis where they think, hey, who are we really hurting? We're not hurting anybody. Just the goyim. Anyway, that's what's going on in the markets. And where I disagree with, I thought Terry had a lot of awareness. Of course, he raised a bunch of money. So remember that. And it's okay. I like the guy. I think I talked to him once before. But these companies come in front of you to raise money. Now, I think in the case of Terry, I don't know him well, but I believe I spoke to him once. I listened to 2 or 3 of his calls. He's worked with busy brands. I think he's sincere. I think he is sincere. Eric Sprott is an interesting case because I never met Eric, but I've followed him a long, long time, and I really like Eric. But 2 companies that I raised money for and got involved in, not as an investment banker, but just as someone. Well, actually, I did raise money for one of them, but the other one, I just got people to invest in it, and it was a great story. Great story. And Eric Sprott became the largest shareholder in the company. And it still got screwed. It got screwed by financing. Same with the other one. A young CEO came in. I talked to the CEO, and he said, at least we're raising the money so we can be in a position to build out our mine and our infrastructure. I said, yeah, but they're going to destroy you on a per share basis. Sprott got killed. Sprott became briefly the largest shareholder in that company as well. And then it's starting to do better. But the problem is, I think on a policy level, I don't think it's counterfeiting per se. I don't think it's fraud per se. It's policy, it's direction, it's leadership. And these same guys, and it's just a few guys, but I think it includes people like Steve Cohen, Ken Griffin, Black and Fink, and Schwartz, and Mr. Blue, and Mr. Green, and Mr. White. they have an agenda. They've been focused on that agenda for 20 years, and they're just moving it forward. And it's a symptom. It's a symptom of the financialization of the United States empire. And these people are not friends of the United States. Many of them have a certain, well, I'm not even sure they believe in God, but there are a certain subset of the human race, and they're not. The United States opened their arms, but the loyalty is not to the United States. The loyalty is to lucre. It's to manna. Manna being money. Manna being money. And it's to a concept of the world that's stuck in Roman times. Do you know if you were transported back to Roman times, that if you were not of the Roman class, and I don't know how they made that distinction because some people came up in it, but you could be raped, you could be killed, you could be stripped of anything, and there's no consequence. Along came without it devolving into religion, but along came, that was what was talked about today at Mass, along came a new covenant, a new commandment to love one another, to love each other. Well, if you're stuck in Roman times, you don't believe in the new covenants. You don't believe in any of that. And Paul, who was a fanatical enforcer of the faith of see, I don't know the terms for those guys that were the priesthood at that time. And then Paul had his conversion on the way to Tarsus. That's where he was from. I've been there. But anyway, he had his conversion and apparently saw, well, I don't want to get religious, but I have to. He saw Christ, and Christ said, Paul, why are you prosecuting me? Why are you basically, why are you attacking me? Anyway, he had a conversion, and Paul, as much as Christ, Paul maybe more than Christ, changed the Roman world changed. And yes, Muhammad came later, but there's a mindset stuck back in that Roman time, smiting and smoting, killing, taking, a very here and now. And you can get complicated, and there's thoughts out there about the gods and Caesar and Son of Man, Son of God, and Zeus being Caesar, being Christ. I don't know. I don't want to get into all of that. All I want to say, in the 2,000 years that have gone on, our moral compass has changed from the Roman Empire. If you went back in Rome, you wouldn't recognize it. You wouldn't recognize life. You wouldn't understand our human contract with each other. Just like I can't recognize it in Palestine right now. There's a question that echoes down the ages, down the decades. How did Hitler happen? How did Hitler happen? How did the world allow Hitler and his henchmen slaughter and kill men, elderly, women, children, just for their faith, just for their heritage, just for a little drop of Jewish blood? How did the world stand by and allow Hitler to slaughter Jews, put them in concentration camps, starve them, experiment on them? How did the world allow Hitler? Well, you're seeing it. You're seeing it. The press propagandizes. There's a mindset out of Israel that Palestinians are subhuman and that you kill them all. Kill them all, because they'll grow up to be terrorists. This is what the world allowed Hitler to do, and we're allowing Benjamin, whatever his real last name is, Miskalaskevich, to do. But what I'm asking you, if you can spin your mind back, that's what they did in Rome. They destroyed the entire city of Carthage. They murdered, wiped everybody out. And something changed. Something changed. Was it Christianity? Was it Saul? Was it 600 years later, was it Islam? Something changed in our contract with each other. And I would propose to you that these bankers have been targeting our markets for their own personal wealth. They control our government, they control our media, they control, in essence, our wars. They control our food. They control our educational system. Now, I don't know who the they is, because maybe it's just some strange bedfellows. But what is happening is that the banksters and the big funds consolidate money as we print it. The reason the United States is printing money and it's running trillions of dollars of deficits is so the banksters get rich. It's the end of empire. It happened at the end of the Roman Empire too. But we're in a financialization phase. And so these men, they're not loyal to the United States. They're not loyal to some idea. I don't want to go too far, but they're not loyal to the concepts that many of us have regarding our beliefs that we were founded on. That doesn't matter to them. All that matters, get the government to print money and we'll run this scam and we'll take that money offshore and we're rich. And they are rich. They are rich. You don't have to go back to Roman times, by the way. I'm reading a book. I don't have it here, it's somewhere, written by Anderson Cooper and Catherine Howe about the Astors. And the Astors became fabulously wealthy. He was a German guy who came to the United States, to America, broke. He was a butcher's son. And he literally made his money slaughtering animals. So the Astor fortune is founded on beaver pelts and other animal pelts from the whole North America. But then what he did is he put that money into New York real estate, and as Germans and Irish and Jews and Italians and French, Irish, the impoverished, came to New York, they had nowhere to go but into the Astor tenement homes. And this was, as I've told you before, the world changed with oil. The world changed with oil. Before they could have the big steam, and I guess steam shovels, it probably wasn't oil, it was steam shovels. But before the big steam shovels, the population couldn't really move north. They couldn't dig and build through the rock and the crap. I don't really understand the geology of Manhattan. So the people were concentrated in these hovels, and hovels, they'd subdivide it, and subdivide it. And so the Astors became the richest. He became the richest man ever, anywhere in the world, on human suffering. And here we have congresswomen wanting to put through passing laws to print money, just print money to pay reparations for what happened to the slaves. It was horrible. It's horrible. I'm not saying it wasn't, but the way Germans, Irish, Italians, Jews, Hungarians, Frenchmen that came over impoverished, oh boy, it wasn't pretty. But our world's changed, and we've had this blessed period where oil, I think it's mainly oil that's changed our lives. And we've had more wealth than we can believe. And the United States has been a special place. But now you have international bankers. I mean, you can, if you want, you can call it something else. You can call it the pharmacy companies, or you can call it the military industrial complex, or you can call it agriculture. It could be any of those things. But it all comes down to really the banks. Anyway, so what they've been doing is they've expanded our money supply using fractional reserve banking. And they've slowly moved, as this happened in Roman times. This happened in Roman times. They moved the good money into this crap money. But they're taking their cut. They're taking their cut, and they're taking their cut. And their loyalty is not to the United States of America. It's to the very money they're making. And what I don't want you to be despondent. He touched on something that's correct. Terry did, and it's something that's my opinion. And then Ham brought it up tangentially. The reason these criminals come on my calls here and they come after me, and they come after on all your space calls, they don't want a brush fire. They don't want a fire to get out of control. And that's why, and then Cindy Lou Who gets offended if I point out that Lou Bravo, Frank Benedetto, and the CEO of Cosmo popped the bubble on both GTII and Finger, but GTII in particular. And she gets upset. Oh, there you are blaming a dead man. Well, he was very much alive when he did that, but she misses the point. And I guess that's my fault. I don't communicate well enough. I get frustrated. I'm not trying to blame. I get frustrated. You know, it's like herding cats. It is exactly like herding cats. Just as you got everybody going in this direction, and they're off, and then they all break off. So we were squeezing. And to me, the only way to make this change is to cost those sons of bitches billions of dollars in a squeeze. But then Lou gets an idea in his head and boom, pop, that one doesn't work. It's because it's impossible for us to work together. We're all cats. We're not dogs. And we're all trying to do something right. And Lou was trying to do the right thing. But the goal is to not let one thing get out of control. Because then Terry said, you know, they do it across all the stocks. That's what they do. And the problem is not counterfeiting, in my opinion. It's not, it's the wrong word. They're trying to create out of the securities markets a fractional reserve security system so that they can, just like they do the banksters, it's all for the banksters. If they can get we, the peasants, to live in the hovels and subdivide the rooms 5 or 6 times and bring in roommates and be enslaved to them the rest of our lives, they'll do it. They're doing it differently, of course. They're doing it differently than it was before. But they're doing it. They're making money off the masses, and they live these frivolous lives. Frivolous. But money is a very powerful thing. So anyway, I'm rambling. I know I'm rambling a bit because there's some things I'm trying not to say. And I also don't want you to be discouraged. But to me, what I don't know, it's probably 26 guys, just like in the precious metals. Maybe it's 100 guys. Hell, if it's 1,000 guys, it's not very many people in the world doing this. But what they do is they incrementally move it forward, move it forward. Come on here, they argue, but they're moving it forward, moving it forward, moving it forward. They don't want a brush fire to come out. They don't want you to understand what's going on. And to me, it's policy. It's leadership. It's not counterfeiting. It's not the suppression of the price. It started out with the big funds, the Blacks and the Finks and the Cohens and the Blankenfelds and all of those guys up there. It started out by increasing assets under management and by increasing income by lending out more shares than you actually have. Just like the fractional reserve banking system. The problem is we now accept money as money. We accept this, and it's just crap. It's just crap. It says Federal Reserve note. Well, okay, what's the Federal Reserve? It's a bunch of banks. Nothing federal, nothing reserve. And then it just has the name, the United States of America. Apropos nothing. It could say Savannah, Georgia there. It's a Federal Reserve note. But then you cut down, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Okay. Signed by Janet Yellow. And it's got a pyramid on the back. Feels kind of tough to imitate, but it's nothing. It says, "In God we trust." In God we trust. This is just credit. This used to be backed by, and I can't, you remember William Jennings Bryan and his argument that we should go to silver from gold. And that a lot of that had to do with the miners out in Nevada and elsewhere having a lot of silver to sell. But there have been, I can't recreate it from early times. There was the Continental, which became worthless. There was currencies of many states. And then in the Civil War, the greenback, I think was originally, bonds, not currency. But anyway, over time, our dollar moved away from being secured by gold, and in FDR was the first to break, and then Nixon. Now this is just worthless. Well, this is what they're doing to our securities markets. It's exactly what they're doing to the securities markets. First, what they did is they got you to put your securities into them, into Wall Street, into these handful of banksters that run the Depository Trust Corporation. Goldman Sachs, Cohen, Morgan Stanley. You can go down the list. So that's what the banking system did. Put your gold in with the banks, put your silver in with the bank, and we'll give you a certificate. And it used to be done on a state by state, bank by bank basis. And so you'd have these bank runs, you'd have these collapses. JP Morgan had to rescue the whole thing at the turn of the century. And the Federal Reserve was trying to codify that idea that get everybody to give their assets to the banksters, trust. Every building you go in with a bank, it says trust, and it's a big building. But you give them an asset, gold and silver, and they put this out against it. It used to be exchangeable. Now it's not. And now you've got Stephanie Kelton telling you you can just print as much as you want. That's the end of empire. But they're doing the exact same thing with the securities markets. They get you to put your securities with them. And you heard Ham's story. You have to have your securities in the electronic system. You have to be part of the DTCC. You have to. You have to have it with the banksters. And then they start lending it out. They lend it out. They lend it out. They lend it out. For a while, there were securities backing up those stock loans. They had type 1, type 2, they had physical. You could have physical and safekeeping. Now, everything's electronic. So instead of the physical backing up the securities out in the system, the physical backs up part of the securities out in the system. That's what happened to our so-called gold standard after FDR changed it. We had you could exchange the gold, but we were based on the currencies traded freely, although it was based on the dollar, which was based on gold. So it was a percentage. I really don't remember. I think from Jim Rickard's studies, it was 40%. It might have gotten down to 20%. But our currency could expand with a certain amount of physical gold. And then, of course, Nixon chopped that off, and there's nothing backing it up now. Oil, our economy, our promise to pay, our military. So the banksters know they got to steal as much as they can before it all collapses. Well, they're doing the same thing with securities. Somewhere around 15 years ago, they said everything's type 1, and they returned everything held in safekeeping, maybe except for some wealthy accounts, special situations. So then you don't know what ratio of gold they have to the securities they put out in the system. The gold is held at DTCC, and I would argue they've severed the link with the gold altogether. But if you want to argue that there's still some ratio there, maybe it's 20%, but they're lending out securities with abandon because they make money on it, and it expands their assets under management, and they can steal their fees, steal their bonuses, and they're not loyal to the United States of America, where many cases America gave them their chance. So I think the battle is that somebody has to recognize this problem and say you cannot have a fractional reserve security system because you've got governance problems. Stock certificates are not fungible. This dollar is fungible with that dollar, but a voting rights on one certificate aren't on the other. And we go along with it because we want to come up with pithy statements that Trump and truth is oxymoronic, and then we're proud and we can go back to our living room and watch our sports, and we feel good about ourselves. We pointed out that Trump is not truthful, and we feel good, and we watch football. But what they're doing is stealing on such a massive scale, and it's all buttressed by propaganda, by bullshit, carrying on of the image of way things used to be. NASDAQ used to be the premier over-the-counter exchange in the world. Now it's just a what do pigs eat out of? Trough. It's just a trough for Adina Friedman and her large expanding ass and the rest of them. It's not a real market. And then the over-the-counter market run by the clowns. Smiling asshole clowns. Run by R. Cromwell Coulson, complete asshole. He's been there since 1997. American Financial Services Corporation operates financial market providing price and liquidity, and how, for 12,400 over-the-counter securities. R. Cromwell Coulson is a thief. I can't find the leadership. Trying to find their smiling faces. Anyway, you can look it up on your own. But what they're doing is they're separating the securities. The next step is that all you have is junk, and that's what you have right now. You don't carry much money in your pocket. It's all in your bank account. So you don't know what the ratio is. There are no bank runs anymore. They just adjust what you can get out of the ATM. You can transfer money. They handle that. But we all trust it. That's what they're doing to the security system. It's not the counterfeiting. It is lending out stock with permission of Bill Clinton in the same model as the fractional reserve banking system. And for the 20 years past, they've been trying to get the securities as far away from the entries in your account, just like the entries in your bank account. They're trying to get those entries as far away from the physical certificates as possible. It's all fictitious. It's all Stephanie Kelton writ large. We have infinite wealth. We just create it. It's a con job. It is a con job. And anyway, the answer is to have a win, but I really think it's at a policy level. And where I disagree with him, and I mean, it's not a vicious disagreement. I think the big companies like the Teslas, the Apples, and in America, we only have big companies anymore. They can fight their own battles. It's the over-the-counter stocks. It should be NASDAQ, but let's get away from Medina Friedman and her expanding derriere. And by the way, whoever said that, I like women. My problem is I fall in love with women. That's the problem. Just don't fall in love. Anyway, I think the answer is that, and Terry talked about how the exchanges make money. They shouldn't be making money. An exchange should be an honest place to trade. It shouldn't be a supermarket. It's not Giant Food. It's not Safeway. It's not Lidl. It should be a post office or a, some organization run by the government. It should be neutral because there's no price discovery. And you're about to find out. By the way, it gives you and me a great opportunity. I guess Terry just raised a bunch of money, he said, so that's good. But I don't know what mining area he's in. But you're going to find out that this system we have, where it's all financialization, is going to leave you and your children and your friends just as impoverished as the Germans and the Jews and the Frenchmen and the Irishmen and the Italians and the Hungarians on the tip of Manhattan. Before oil was discovered, before the modern industrial world began. And that's how our life is going to be. The patents will go to China and elsewhere. The banks, they'll fly over to Tel Aviv, maybe New Zealand, maybe Singapore, maybe I don't know about Monaco, so small, but they'll be offshore. They'll just be offshore while we suffer, unless we change it. And I think, I wish we could, you and I, as a group, we could go take over an exchange. Terry said it. Exchanges shouldn't be run for profit. So let's go take over the Philadelphia Exchange. Let's start an exchange. We'll start one in Richmond, Virginia. It's very hot there. We'll start one in Burlington, Vermont. It's very communist up there. We'll start one in San Antonio, Texas. Start an exchange where people, the thing I keep hearing, and what we have to separate ourselves from. We want to see our stocks as black and white entries in our accounts. We want to be in the system. We want to be in the DTCC. We got to get away from that. And I don't think we can change it by going to Trump. Who sat with Trump in Saudi Arabia right next to him? It was Fink or Schwartz or Black or one of them. They're not going to change it. They're not going to change it. But if we could start an exchange where the market makers were ourselves, and maybe it only traded an hour a day, didn't trade all day because we couldn't handle it. But the certificates were stored electronically, but the real certificates, in other words, you could see them. There'd be no tomfoolery, but they'd be stored in a vault. And so when Cindy Lou Who sold her 10,000 shares of GTII to Lou Bravo, I can't believe he's dead, and you would go back in the vault, you'd pull Cindy's out, she would have signed, the printer would be there, zoom, zoom, and it'd come out and it'd say Lou Bravo on it, and it'd be stored in the vault. The price discovery would be, it wouldn't be instantaneous at first. But I think that if we got one deal done, the next thing would be 20, the next thing would be 50. And I'll tell you the area, and I don't know how to call Terry Lynch. The area that it's to do it in is the mining area and oil and gas. That's the area to do it in. And we could all get rich. We just can't be in the system anymore. We have to get out of the system. We are enslaved. We're just tenement rats to John Jacob Astor. In our case, we're just in the system of these banks. That's what we are. And we do it willingly with our credit cards. We want our credit score, and now there's going to be a social credit score. What the hell are we thinking? Anyway, sorry, I've just gone on too long with that. I'll go through questions. Sexy Nixie to the moon. Yeah, Raha, I think, and I don't have any conversations with the company, so you have to do your own thinking. But I think soon Nixie needs to give us the information implied in its last many news announcements. So I've got a thought for you, Raha. Nixie is trading at a $40 million market cap. Finger is trading at, I don't know, 250 million. Nixie has the potential to do in 2 months the same revenue that Finger currently is doing in a year. Similar margins. Look, it's all has to be executed. My point isn't to tear down Finger at all. It's to suggest to you that Nixie at 40 million, if it went to 200 million, that's 5x. That's all I'm saying. And when could it happen? I think it can happen when there's clarity in the news and the ideas. That's what I think. So I think you're right about Nixie, and I think it's and it does have the potential of squeezing although I'm not focused on that, but it does have, it was recruiter.com, and recruiter.com was shorted to oblivion. Brent Sun has been running Nixie, but now there's a new CEO. So there's always a risk that a new CEO doesn't recognize the risk on Wall Street, but I would argue to you that Brent Sun never recognized it either. What's different here is I think the investor group backing Nixie fully understands the risk on Wall Street. So I don't think they're the groups. I'm not saying it's a monolith. There's a lot of different investors, but I think there's so much Wall Street experience that they don't need an attaboy like Brent does. Oh, I feel good. Oh, I can sell it. I can sell it to this group out of Israel. Great. Drive me crazy. Finger is a small cap NASDAQ. Oh wait, Finger is an OTC scam. You know, Mark, you're the scam, and you win. I mean, you come here to gloat, you know, to mow the lawn, to spray bullets over the fence, and just have a little fun. But you don't impress me. I don't think you're particularly smart. You're not clever. You're just a bully. You have everything on your side. And so you're here to steal. Look, they're not scams. You're the scam. You are the scam. NASDAQ, I was with a really great oil and gas man, well respected, now running a private company instead of public. And I think I've said this before, but you're probably new. In New York, and we were at Times Square, and we're having a great time. And he said, we had some meetings set up, and he said, let's, I think it was dinner. We went to an early dinner at just a packed Italian place, big high ceilings. But this guy really, at his heart, is an accountant, but he's also an oil man. He's also an investor and a oil guy, and he's done extremely well. But he started at a young age, and anyway, he loves the challenge of the asset, how it's financed, what it's worth, how many shares. So we're sitting there, and he's got his computer and he's writing out some things, and there was paper tablecloths. I think it was paper because I was writing on the tablecloth. But I said to him, you know, the problem with it wasn't his company, it was a different company. I said, the problem with this company is they're going to need to raise money. And he said, oh, but look at how big the volume is here, volume in terms of the asset. If they raise money at thus price, the stock's going to be $400 or whatever. And I said, yeah, but they won't let it be raised at that price. They're going to, people like you, Mark, are going to come in and short the stock down and down and down. They're going to sell stock that doesn't exist, and they'll do it in collusion. They'll use the market maker exemption. I went through the whole thing with him, and he looked at me and he said, he said, how are they ever going to allow that to happen? In other words, the regulators, faith in the system. You guys have destroyed the system, and you come here to gloat. You come here to gloat. It's not the over-the-counter stocks or the NASDAQ stocks that are a scam. It's you. You're the scam. And then you destroy the company, and then you, with blood dripping down your hands from taking the skin off another carcass, you're saying, oh, it's the company that's the scam. I don't have any respect for you or for what you're doing. I know it's a sickness that you have, this evil that's coursing through you, this obsession with money, cars, women. And you can go on Saturday and be with the fellas and feel good. But you're probably a young man. You're probably a young man, and you can't imagine that you'll ever be older. But you will be. You'll be older. You won't be proud of what you've done, unless you're completely heartless, which is possible. That is possible. You could be John Jacob Astor. But you've wasted your life. And I pray that you have a transition, you have an intervention. Mark, why do you persecute me? Mark, why do you persecute me? I hope that happens to you. But it doesn't look like it's going to. There's no way to change it when everything revolves around the Maritime Admiralty Law and we're a product of water. Huh? A to Z. So you're one of these Americans that does not believe there's any gold at Fort Knox. I bet $1 million to 1 that that's the truth. And I'm just spitballing. Thank you for spitballing. Why don't you go back to scratching your balls and spitballing? If they have the gold, it may be a lie to America. Many people wonder if we have the gold, but I don't think that's the correct question. It's very likely we have the gold. We hold most of the world's, well, not anymore, but for a long time we held most of the Western world's gold, but we still hold quite a bit of it. But it's not whether we hold the gold, it's how many times it's been hypothecated and re-hypothecated. And I'm sorry. A lot of these people are idiots. They're full of their confidence because they have a scam. They run a scheme to sell things that don't exist, but it's allowed. And that's why they get their courage. But the question is not whether we have the gold, it's how many times it's been lent out, how many times it's been sold. And what the problem is, it's fine when the whole ecosystem goes along with you. But the problem is a lot of the gold's being bought by China, to keep it simple. So when a New York bank lends out the gold and re-lends it out and re-lends it out, and in one of those collateral chains, a Chinese merchant or a Chinese government buys it, they get delivery of the gold. It comes out of New York, it goes to China. It's not here. But there's still collateral, just like at DTC with our securities, there's still collateral that they can adjust the knob and say, well, instead of us of having 10 to 1, we're now 25 to 1. But as long as we we just keep printing statements and we stay calm and we cover it with Stephanie Kelton's printed money, we should be able to control it. They're not going to be able to control it. Hey, Ryan. I think the answer, BlackRock, I think the answer, this guy right here, he's a genius. You should follow him. He's got a lot to say. I'm just not going to read anything he's saying anymore. Now, it's not a crime to buy more finger, but if you, and thank you for bringing it up, if you collude and everybody buys it, before the market opens, that they'll get you for that. But if you, after the market opens, I don't think they can really they can't really tell you what to do. And if a bunch of us happen to buy in the morning after the market opens, I'm not sure that can be wrong. But I think any kind of collusion is illegal, and I don't want to be part of it. Why didn't Reichman want to talk to Lou? Because Reichman is, as everyone looks back on it now, Reichman was a fraud. That's probably why I didn't want to talk to Lou. So Lou was probably right. But what Lou didn't know is one of the guy actually getting everything done wasn't Reichman. It was somebody else. That's what Lou didn't know. So Lou was barreling in there, and you got to give him credit. I mean, no one told him, I guess, but Reichman wasn't the guy doing the things to try to make GTII squeeze. He was, I guess, ultimately he had to approve everything, but he wasn't the brains behind it. He wasn't the motivating force. There was another guy Lou needed to talk to, not Reichman. Reichman was arrogant asshole, and it turns out it looks like he committed fraud, according to the filings. But the reason Reichman didn't talk to Lou, it was the wrong person. If Lou wanted to talk to who was actually trying to make things happen, it was a different person. But Lou didn't know that. But it's not my point to get caught up in all that. The point is, you're trying to catch the shorts in a squeeze, and it was working. But then you can't control everybody. And boom, it stopped. And they win. And if it hadn't been that, if it hadn't been Lou, it would have been something else. They don't quit. It would have been something else. Hey, Colby. I think the bond market is sending some warning signs. But I also think, I've said it all in. I think the S&P is I've picked really outrageous targets because I think the market's going to go to extremes. But I think the S&P is headed to 8,500, the Dow to 65,000, NASDAQ to 30,000, Russell to 4,000, gold to 5,000. That looks tame now, and silver to 120. Now, if the S&P got to 7,500, if the Dow got to 55,000, if the NASDAQ got to 25,000, if the Russell got to 3,500, I would count that as a win. But directionally, I think the markets are going massively higher. And one of the things that might cause it is the Fed, I think, is going to be late on interest rates, but they could surprise and drop interest rates by a huge amount at some point. But I think they'll be in there buying. They're going to buy to keep the bonds down, the yields down. But you're right. The narrative right now is that the bond market is showing weakness. It's not good that United States debt is no longer AAA rated. That's not good. I don't know what it'll mean. Because what collateral will replace U.S. Treasuries? What? Sudanese government bonds or Taiwanese bonds? I don't get what can replace it. So all in. I think there's going to be one more run for the roses in the equity market, and the bond market will be okay during that time. In fact, yields are probably going to go down. After that, it'll be Katie bar the door. So I think what you're learning, what's in your head from reading the news, I think there'll be a shift. So that information, you should keep it in your mind, but I think it'll apply, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, 18 months from now. I don't know the exact time frame. But when it comes in, it's going to be devastating. So I guess it boils down to, will the world believe the Fed one more time? And I think it will. All right, I don't see. Yeah, that's true. Where are we standing now with Finger? Here's what I think. I have a slight different view than Ham from what he predicted. but I could be wrong. But I think what's going to happen with Finger tomorrow morning, maybe Ham's correct at 9:30, 9:50, the stock goes up. Maybe he's right. But I think what's going to happen in the morning, it may be right from the start, but I think certainly by 10:30, I think Finger will be under 4 and maybe go down as low as 320, something like that. Why? Because the options that were exercised at the close involuntarily, so in other words, people who didn't sell their $4 calls, across the system, there's going to be exercises. This is what happened to me at 404. So people are going to end up with, I don't know, 10,000 shares in their account that they can't pay for. Tomorrow morning, those will get sold out. So what can you do if you want to buy more shares? Put in a buy order below the market. Buy 500 shares at 325. Buy 500 shares at 350. Buy 500 shares at 360. And pick any number, maybe lower even, and maybe you'll get that off. I think Finger during the week will try to get back to 4. Will it be tomorrow afternoon? Will it be Tuesday? Will it be Wednesday? I don't know. Will it actually get all the way to 4? We'll see. But if you were able to buy Finger as a trade tomorrow at 325 and the stock rallied to 375 or 380 tomorrow afternoon or Tuesday, I'd be tempted to take that trade. And you say, where are we standing with Finger? I don't know. I mean, Ham did not repeat the rumor he heard, so you have to ask him about that. I know on the 28th of May to maybe the 2nd of June, they're expecting the annual report and earnings for the fourth quarter. That's going to be really important. We still haven't heard if any of the warrants were exercised. We've heard rumors, but we haven't seen it in a news story. That'll probably come out at some point. Maybe it's just a change in securities ownership or something. I don't know, but probably that'll show up if it happened. I think it's possible something else could happen along those lines, but I don't want to go along with that. I don't buy that Warren Buffett is buying Cirrus or anything like that, but if you want to get into trading, go ahead. All right, I'm not going to go back on those answers. Yeah, he probably ran for I'd say he ran for 4 hours. It might have been longer. It might have been 5 hours. Full speed. He was running at full speed and he was looking ahead. He was like in two worlds. He was like he was in another. I couldn't get his attention. Yeah, and I think I felt like he was running to be included with all the other dogs. He wanted to be there. And he wanted to, he wanted to get there. That's what I think. But maybe he was just scared, and that was his go-to thing. But yeah, he seemed like he really wanted to go and get there into that meadow or whatever. I do think when he expired, he was happy. I saw it when it happened. And I think oh God, it's hard to remember. It's just hard. But I think it's what he wanted. I do wish I could hug him. Do wish I could hug him. That boy's a great boy. That boy, I couldn't resist playing with that dog. God, I don't understand this comment about water. I gotta try to understand this comment about water. It's controlled by merchant bankers. Again, we're talking about water. That's why money is considered a liquid asset. And banks control the flow of currencies. I'll think about it. Let me see what else you said up here. That's it. Gold is money. Everything else is credit. There's no way to change it when everything revolves around admiralty law. So it's all British. And originally, the original corporation, which was a huge breakthrough in the course of human affairs, I believe was Dutch. And it was the East India Company, I think. But that corporation was based on ships. And the breakthrough there was people used to invest in a voyage, but this breakthrough was you're investing in a company. And that transformed the world. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's and banking. You could argue went back a lot further, but I think banking basically started. Well, it's probably before that, but banking really kind of started at the fractional reserve banking started out of Italy, Holland, and then in London too. All right, that's very interesting. That's maybe those terminologies also were how people thought back then, because everything was, as you say, the economic powers were the nations with rivers and boats for the sea. It's interesting. I'll have to. I don't know where to find more out about it, but it's interesting. Yeah, that's a good boy. Yeah, the dogs are the best. Dogs are the best. And my sister says I'll see him again. I hope she's right. The Federal Reserve is more like the Pirates of the Caribbean, holding us all friends. I like your thinking. I have to try to, I will consider it. I do think the moneyed interests in England and when the Deepwater well blew out, that was British Petroleum, and they were fast and loose with safety. Matthew Simmons believed that they never capped that well. And I tend to agree with him because I think they killed him. But that there's a huge oil spill on the bottom of the Gulf. My friends think he was not right, but anyway, without going down that conspiracy theory, to me, British Petroleum treated the United States of America as if we were just another colony. They treated us as, just some population to take advantage of. I don't know. I hope, Sharif. I would have picked him up. I like that one. I would have picked him up a lot. Well, I think I got off track tonight, so maybe I'll leave it at that. So to summarize on Finger, I think you might get a chance to buy it cheaper than it is now tomorrow. You might have a trade in it, or you buy it and hold it longer term. I do agree with the gentleman that was pointing out that Nixie might be a trade. I don't think you have very long to get into it. I don't know how long, but the news seems to be flowing. The last week, they've had the new CEO, so it feels like it's getting ready. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I'm gonna finish my apple and go to bed, and we'll catch everybody tomorrow night. It's frustrating. I wish I was a writer or something, because this problem is fixable. It's not being defined correctly. Ultimately, somebody has to tell the banks, you can't treat stocks like you're treating money. But it needs leadership. And the banks aren't leaders. The banks are takers. And they don't offer you anything. Here's an ETF, here's a mutual fund, let us manage your money. They're not offering you anything, except for glossy brochures. And you can trade on an app. That's all they're offering. All right, I'm going to sign out. I'm sorry I went off on a tangent there. We will catch each other tomorrow.